الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح للأمة فكشف الله تعالى به الغمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين من ربه. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد الرحمة المهداة وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. All praises belonging to Allah Azza wa Jal. May the peace and blessings be upon His beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and upon his family and companions in entirety. To ask Allah Azza wa Jal on this blessed day of Friday to give us guidance to those factors that will give us enduring momentum as individuals and as a community. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow us to capitalize on our emotional momentum and continue to grow in our relationship with Him and to continue to grow as a community, as an ummah. May Allah Azza wa Jal give victory to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine. May Allah Azza wa Jal give victory to the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah Azza wa Jal strengthen our resolve. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us willpower that guides us to the most pleasing things to Him in all our affairs, in our personal decisions, in the things that we say and do, and also in our community decisions. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us of those who truly seek Him in everything in life. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. Amma ba'd, brothers and sisters, before continuing with the khutbah, a general reminder about the etiquettes of Jumu'ah. As the Prophet ﷺ teaches us, the man massa al-hasa faqad lagha wa man lagha fala jumu'ata lah. It's been brought to my attention that in our Friday prayers, sometimes there's some talking, sometimes there's distraction with phones or other gadgets. Remember this, the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever plays with the pebbles, then he has done something that is laghu. Now, of course, we don't have pebbles in here. We have carpet, we have phones, we have watches, and we have other things. The Prophet ﷺ warns that there are certain things that discredit my Jumu'ah from counting. Be very careful not to be that person who wastes their time and energy here, responds to a text, answers a phone call, plays with something on your phone. Don't do that. This is a sacred space. This is a time frame that has always been a time frame of barakah and goodness for the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ since the time of Muhammad ﷺ to this very day. Seeking an hour in which our dua is answered, as the Prophet ﷺ says, that on the day of Jumu'ah, there is an hour in which dua is answered. And the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever meets this hour and asks Allah for something, Allah will give it to him. And many scholars say that this is during the time of Jumu'ah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to answer our prayers and fulfill our needs. Allahumma ameen. Getting into the khutbah. Brothers and sisters, life puts us on an emotional roller coaster many times. Ups and downs, difficulty and ease, happiness, anger, sadness and despair. Our emotions as human beings are often triggered by what we go through. Especially for us as an ummah and as a community for the past several months since October. We've been on an intense emotional roller coaster with what's happening in Gaza and Palestine and what's continuing to happen. And we pray to Allah on this blessed day of Friday to give faraj to the people of Rafah. May Allah Azza wa Jal strengthen them. Right now, Israel is continuing to pummel this very small strip of land with its bombs, with its weaponry and artillery. And now it's going into the most densely populated area in Gaza, Rafah. And it's continuing to do its atrocity. May Allah Azza wa Jal send His la'anat and His punishment on those who kill innocent people. May Allah Azza wa Jal hasten the demise of Israel and the Zionist regime that supports it. May Allah Azza wa Jal hasten the demise of Zionism wherever it is. May Allah Azza wa Jal give it a quick downfall, a swift downfall. May Allah give them disgrace. And may Allah humiliate them and make them an ayah. Just as He made Ad and Thamud a sign for the world. May Allah Azza wa Jal make the army of Israel a sign for the world, not to transgress against the boundaries of Allah Azza wa Jal by continuing to abuse their power. Allahumma ameen. Make dua. Make dua for the people of Rafah right now, because it is a time of intensifying bala and karb. May Allah Azza wa Jal give them faraj. Allahumma ameen. So we've been on an emotional roller coaster, experiencing a range of emotions, sometimes being happy by the beautiful response of the people of Gaza and what they're teaching the world, and how they're changing the direction of humanity. And wallahi, we believe deep down inside that they are truly changing the direction of humanity. Sometimes it's other emotions, like sadness leading to despair when we see all of the children who've been killed, all the innocent people, all of the destruction. Sometimes it's anger when we see how people in positions of power react to what's happening. Like our current authority in our country, Biden and those who support him, and those who are waging Israel's war in America. May Allah Azza wa Jal hold them all accountable. That angers us, that we see people with such power, millions and billions behind them, continuing to turn a blind eye to the obvious genocide that's happening to innocent people. But our country is waking up. Many people are waking up. The college campuses are showing us the response of future leaders in our country to what's happening. The days of the likes of Biden and bankrupt politicians who get their sponsorship from AIPAC and from Israeli lobbyists, those days are numbered. It's going to come to an end. As Allah Azza wa Jal promises in the Quran, فَأَمَّا الزَّبَدُ فَيَذْهَبُ جُفَاءً وَأَمَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسَ فَيَمْكُثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. That which is meaningless, that which is useless, that which is bankrupt and corrupt, that doesn't remain. Yeah, sure, it may have steam for years, decades, a generation or two. But we firmly believe in the promise of Allah Azza wa Jal. We firmly believe that Allah Azza wa Jal does not turn a blind eye to the oppression of the oppressors. We've been on an emotional roller coaster, and this is what I want to reflect with you a little bit more. Where should these emotions go? The first layer of human experiences is emotions, right? What happens? These emotions, when something happens to me, I have a knee-jerk reaction to it, then my mind processes it, and our reactions to whatever we're going through is registered. First layer of whatever I deal with as a human being is emotional. Because me, my soul, ingrained within it is this spectrum of human emotions. Allah created me with these emotions. These emotions can bring me up or bring me down. They could enable me or disable me. They could inspire me or depress me. That's what emotions do. Now, after this first layer, and in this sense, we're all emotional. We're all emotional beings. Every human being is emotional in the sense that, can I remove and uproot from my heart feelings of sadness and feelings of happiness and feelings of anger? No, that means I'm going to, remove from myself humanity altogether. I'm not going to be a human being anymore if I don't experience emotions. The knee-jerk, in this vein, this is how the Muslim reflects on this. The knee-jerk reaction that we have to things in life tells us a lot about our condition, as the condition of our souls. What do I mean knee-jerk reaction? ردة الفعل. My immediate response. Something happens, what's the first word that comes out of my tongue? Is it a curse word? Or is it إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ? Or is it لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله? The Quran says it. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا. First knee-jerk reaction is what? إِنَّا لِلَّهِ. I belong to Allah and I'm going back to Him. Knee-jerk reactions tell us what's inside here. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ teaches us. Famous hadith, we share it in so many different talks. And the Prophet ﷺ passing by a woman crying over the grave of her son who passed away. He said to her, اتَّقِ اللَّهَ وَاصْبِرِي. Be conscious of Allah and be patient. So then she didn't know it was the Prophet ﷺ talking. She said, إِنَّكَ لَمْ تُصَبْ بِمُصِيبَتِي. You don't know what I'm going through. You never experienced this. So then she was told it was the Prophet ﷺ. She went to apologize. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ الصَّدْمَةِ الْأُولَى. True patience is in the first strike of grief. The first moment, that's when your patience true. The knee-jerk reaction. That's why Allah says about the munafiqeen. What does He say about the munafiqeen? وَلَتَعْرِفَنَّهُمْ فِي لَحْنِ الْقَوْلِ. You will know who the munafiqeen are by what? فَلَتَاتِ أَلْسِنَتِهِمْ وَصَفَحَاتِ وُجُوهِهِمْ. That's لَحْنِ الْقَوْلِ. You will know the munafiqeen by those words that exit their mouth unwittingly. It was their immediate response. They didn't even get a chance to think about it. They said it before they could process it. وَصَفَحَاتِ وُجُوهِهِمْ. By their facial expressions and their sudden gestures. That's what you know what's going on inside. Brothers and sisters, if emotions are this important and we've been on this emotional roller coaster, we need to ask ourselves a set of questions. The first of these questions, by the way, this helps us in our personal private life. And it also helps us with what we're dealing with as an ummah. The first of these questions is, what does a meaningful emotional response look like? All right. If masha'ir have this martaba of ahamiyya, this level, if emotions have this level of importance, what does it mean to have a meaningful emotional response? Well, one thing is, it needs to be measured. Because if emotions are not left in check, then what? Guess what? It'll destroy everything and anything in between. That's what happens. Recklessness, that's not what our deen teaches us. It needs to be measured, right? As Allah says, وَلَوْ اتَّبَعَ الْحَقُّ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ لَفَسَدَتِ السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَنْ فِيهِنْ. If I allowed my emotions to run wild, everything I want, every want and desire, and I just run after it, then guess what? The heavens, the earth, and all that is in between will be corrupted. That's what the Quran says. It needs to be measured. And you know, this emotion needs to be constructive. How can I make my emotion constructive? Well, that's the big question. How can I make my emotions lift me up? I deal with a lot of emotions, and these emotions I feel are weighing me down like anchors. Whatever you're dealing with. Family situation, mental health issues, your personal life, your wealth, your health, or whatever else in between. I'm dealing with emotions all the time. How can I make sure my emotions aren't eating away at me and instead making me better? How could they become constructive? The other thing that these meaningful emotional responses need to be, they need to be directed. If I just leave it like that, it's going to be dead weight. We said the same thing about Ramadan. We've been reflecting the past 2 khutbahs about where should I be going with this spiritual battery I charged during Ramadan? Well, if my spiritual capacity, if my energy is not put to good use, guess what? It's going to die away. And I'm not going to make any benefit from it. It's just going to weaken and decay, and then, I'm going to recharge the battery again. It's like someone keeping a battery on the side. After time passes, it loses its energy and its vitality, so you need to charge it again, just keep it on the side again. Iman's not meant to be kept on the shelf. Iman is not meant to be kept on the shelf. It needs to change my reality. I need to use it in some way. It needs to be directed, meaning I can hone my emotions in a way that's going to strengthen my will. Now here's the big thing. In order to get an answer, a real answer to this question, how can I have a meaningful response with my emotions? I need to go back to the Prophet ﷺ, Habib ﷺ. How did he deal with his emotions? Well, the Prophet ﷺ had elevated emotions. How can I get an elevated emotional experience? By having a noble cause. What triggers my emotions? What gets my time? What do I care about? If it's something noble, then you know what? My experiences with emotions are also going to be noble. Prophet ﷺ wasn't someone who had lowly ambition. Right? What do I allow to get under my skin? This is way easier said than done. This is what we live for as Muslims. This is what we aspire for. If I continue to allow the trivial things to get under my skin, this bothered me here, this is not in place there, I didn't get this, I wanted that and it didn't happen, and this continues to bring me down, guess what? If I continue to allow my ambitions to be lowly, I'm going to be lowly. If I raise them up, if what gets me angry are things that should get me angry, then I'm going to become elevated. And you know what? This has been happening indirectly. In the past several months, I need to realize it and make sure it's registering here. When I see the scenes that are coming out of Gaza that should make me angry, and you know what? That anger in my heart is not something bad. That anger, when anger is had for the right reason, it's something that actually gives you energy. When anger is had for the wrong reason, that's what depresses. Right? The Prophet ﷺ كان إذا غضب لله عز وجل. The Prophet ﷺ was elevated because his aspirations were elevated, right? He would get angry for Allah. The Prophet ﷺ, for example, let's take some examples. What happened? Someone took eggs from the bird's nest. The Prophet ﷺ got so angry. He said, "Man faja'a hadhihi biwaladiha, ruddu laha waladaha." Prophet ﷺ saw this bird making a noise. It was in distress, and his rahmah triggered his attention, right? Triggered his attention. This was for animals. And the Prophet ﷺ was rahma lil alameen. He noticed this bird. And he said, "Man faja'a hadhihi biwaladiha." Who's the one who caused this bird distress by taking its eggs that it was nesting? To return its eggs to it. Ya Allah, Ya Allah. That's what the Prophet ﷺ teaches me. I think about the small and I think about the big. You know, another example. What else did the Prophet ﷺ get angry for? One time there was this this woman, right? Or there's two examples from the same companion, Sayyidina Osamah bin Zayd. This woman who was from a noble tribe, Bani Makhzum. She stole. She was supposed to be held accountable for doing that. And so the Bani Makhzum went to Sayyidina Osamah because they knew the Prophet ﷺ loved Sayyidina Osamah. Wasta, right? Subhanallah. Wasta and connections is this age-old thing. From the time of Adam until the day of judgment, people will always be looking for an in route, right? Way to get away with something, right? I need to find the in route. Go to Sayyidina Osamah. So he said, can you please talk to the Prophet ﷺ? She's from a noble tribe. Let her get out of it. So then the Prophet, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ said to him, أَتَشْفَعُ فِي حَدٍّ مِّنْ حُدُودِ اللَّهِ? Are you trying to help someone escape a boundary of Allah Azza wa Jal? She did something wrong. She needs to be held accountable. The leaders of our country need to hear it loud and clear. It's not about false allegiances. That's a bankrupt sense of democracy. You support Israel, whether it's right or wrong, because they're your allies. Can you get more bankrupt in your outlook towards life? Is this what the progressed world in 2024 looks like? Ya Allah, Jahiliyyah of over 1500 years ago is present and alive in the most intellectual and elite people, quote unquote, in this day and age. That thing is not going to go away. If we think that people have broken out of the ignorance of the past, reality comes to show us that's not true at all, right? أتشفع في حد من حدود الله. We ask the brothers, please, تقدموا إلى الأمام. افسحوا يفسح الله لكم. Please, تزاحموا تراحموا. I see spaces between you and the people next to you. Fill those spaces in. We have brothers standing in the back trying to find their way in. We want to try to make space for those coming. Jazakumullah khair. Please fill in the rows. Fill in the rows. Barakallahu feekum. So we're calling upon the conscience of people. Hey, you know what? We're telling those politicians, the extra buck isn't worth it. Yeah, you're going to get into a public seat and you're going to be elected. But you're going to be bankrupt because you're enabling and supporting something that has no morality behind it. Brothers and sisters, going back to the Prophet ﷺ, another example with Sayyidina Osamah was when he took the life of someone he thought wasn't being honest and genuine. It was in the middle of battle. There was this man who was being pursued by Sayyidina Osamah. And he was terrified. He turned around and he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Sayyidina Osamah went ahead and killed him anyway. So the other companion who was with Sayyidina Osamah said, how could you do that? That was so wrong of you. He took his shahada. He surrendered. He stopped fighting. They were in the middle of battle. So then the Prophet ﷺ was notified of this, and he came to Sayyidina Osamah and he said, did you open his heart? هَلَّا شَقَقْتَ عَنْ قَلْبِهِ. Sayyidina Osamah said, إِنَّمَا كَانَ مُتَعَوِّذًا. He was just saying this to get out of the situation he was in. Prophet ﷺ was so angry with him. Ya Allah, that's meaningful anger. When that anger doesn't blind me, when that love doesn't blind me. I'm going to come to examples from the Quran that emphasize this meaning. My anger should not cloud my judgment and make me do what's wrong. My love should not cloud my judgment and cause me to do what's wrong. This is what the Quran says. There's 2 verses about justice. It shows us how the Prophet ﷺ experienced elevated emotions. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين. Right? Allah Azza wa Jalla in this first verse tells us, hey, you know what? Don't let your love of a people blind you to doing what's right. That's wrong. If you do that, you'll find yourself emotionally down. No, I'm not going to do that. Not for my brother, not for my kin, not for those of the same ethnic background. Nobody. Someone who does something wrong needs to be told, what you're doing is wrong, you need to stop right now. Even if it's your own parents or your own relatives, that's what the Quran is saying. Don't allow your love of a people blind you. And then the other verse says, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Don't allow your hatred of a people cause you not to be just. Be just. That is closer to having taqwa. If I start living my life like this, can you imagine how many problems would wither away? How many problems from subhanAllah, this affects the family realities, by the way, friendships, right? Oh, I don't talk to my uncle or my aunt or my sibling or whoever else. Why? Oh, because there's family conflicts and we haven't spoken to them in years. Even those problems have nothing to do with me. That's jahiliyatun samma. That's directly from the attitudes of jahiliyah. I'm just going to cut off somebody just because those near me are cutting off them. That doesn't make any sense. Same thing with friendships. Same thing with dealing with Muslims and non-Muslims. We apply the same logic. Look at this beautiful example from Al-Habib sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Some of his antagonists from among the Yahud of Medina during those times. The hadith says, إن اليهود أتوا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقالوا السلام عليك. They twisted words. Instead of saying Assalamu alayk, instead of saying peace be upon you, they said Assalamu alayk. May ruin be upon you. So the Prophet ﷺ did nothing but say Wa alaykum, and unto you. That's it. He didn't do anything more. Sayyidah Aisha was with him, right next to him. She said to them, Assalamu alaykum wa la'anakum Allah wa ghadiba alaykum. She said to them, and again, there's no greater or more noble a reason that could cause your anger than to be angry for the Prophet ﷺ. This is Hamil al-Risala, the carrier of the message. More sacred than anyone to us, right? She got so angry, she said, may Allah's ruin be upon you. And may His la'na and His ghadab, may His damnation and His anger all be upon you. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Mahlan ya Aisha. Hold it right there, Aisha. Alayki bil-rifq. Wiyaki wal-unf. Wal-fuhsh. Don't be someone who's obscene. Don't allow people to drag you to lowly experiences with emotions. Don't do that. Don't allow their horrible character to ruin you. So then she said to him, أَوَلَمْ تَسْمَعْ مَا قَالُوا. Didn't you hear what they said? So then the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, I responded to them. وَيُسْتَجَابُ لِي فِيهِمْ وَلَا يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُمْ فِيَّ. My prayer is answered about them. Their prayer is not answered about me. You see the adl of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam teaches us elevated emotions. Ya Allah, elevated emotions. How to experience anger in a meaningful way. Brothers and sisters, how does anger translate to action for the believer? For me, when it's for Allah, it's beautiful. When it's for my nafs, it's ugly. When it's for Allah, it's beautiful. And if it's for Allah, it needs to be governed by the rules of my deen. And that's when it's going to be beautiful. How does it translate to action? Well, there's a lot to say about that. This is what we need to think about, right? Because we've seen too many videos, heard too many news reports, seen too many things happen. And we're just like loaded with emotions. What am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do now with all of this? Brothers and sisters, if I realize how critical emotions are and how deeply rooted they are in my responses and my attitudes towards things, I need to make sure that I capitalize on this emotional momentum. How can I capitalize on this emotional momentum? Well, we as a community clearly say, and this is being streamed, that I will never normalize with Zionism. I can't sit down with the people who are directly oppressing my brothers and sisters. That's insanity. It's insanity for me to accept to sit down with someone who goes around and funds the army that's sending bombs on the people of Gaza. That's a decision that we made clearly as a community. You're a politician? We're not interested in hearing what you have to say. You're not welcome in our masajid until you say there needs to be a ceasefire. And until you say there needs to be an end of the occupation, if you're not for that, we're not for misguided political activism. The days of Muslims being engaged in misguided political activism are done, inshallah. They need to be done. They need to be done. A new direction needs to be sought. For us to clap for someone who is asking for our votes, and then he's going to go around and do everything the opposite of what he said to us in our masjid, we don't want that anymore. It's enough of that hypocrisy and that nifaq. Take that somewhere else. But brothers and sisters, part of living by this and directing this anger in a wise and a guided way is it needs to materialize to some meaningful action. I can't even be tricked into a quote-unquote interfaith gathering that seeks to legitimize what Israel is doing. No, the direction has to change for us as a community. Because brothers and sisters, when we look at our emotions, as we said, they have this deep of an effect. They could change our emotions. Indeed, can change our lives for the better or for the worst. Look at people in their lives. There's misguided love, and then there's love that guides you to the highest levels of iman. What's misguided love? How many times do we get people coming with problems, say, I have this toxic attachment, I need this brother, or I need this guy or this girl in my life, and my life is going to be ruined if I don't have X, Y, or Z. I'm in love with the thought and the idea of going down this career or going to this college, and if I don't get that, I'm going to be down and depressed. That's misguided love. Compare that. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla actually describes this in the Quran. كَلَّا بَلْ تُحِبُّونَ الْعَاجِلَةِ. You love the immediate. وَتَذَرُونَ الْآخِرَةِ. In another verse Allah says, وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. That's all misguided love. حُبًّا جَمًّا. That you love money and assets and prosperity. Then you find guided love that leads to the highest stations of iman. The Prophet ﷺ describes it. ثلاث من كن فيه وجد حلاوة الإيمان أن يحب الله ورسوله أكثر مما سواهما. To love Allah and His Prophet more than anyone else. And to love someone for the sake of Allah, no other reason but for the sake of Allah. That's guided love. And then anger is the same thing. There's guided anger and there's misguided anger. أوثق عرى الإيمان الحب لله والبغض في الله. الحب والبغض في الله. This is the highest levels of iman, experiencing anger and love for the sake of Allah truly. Brothers and sisters, how can I start experiencing this? How can we capitalize on this as a community? Where should we go with this? How can we translate our actions to this? Well, we need to start working. We've had enough emotional build-up. Now where are we going to go with it? We need to work to undo decades of political corruption in our country. It's not impossible. Israeli lobbyism started only a few decades ago. The generation of our parents and our grandparents, the generation of our grandparents were here before Israeli lobbyism even began. You were talking about decades ago in the 60s, 50s, 60s. They would not even be able to make their foot and step inside the biggest political institutions in our country. But with time, these lobbies, funded by billions of dollars, powerful corporations, changed American politics in decades. We need to undo this. We need to do something about it. What good is it for me to sit down as a Muslim and watch the corruption of Israel fester in, by the way, it's not just in Palestine. We said this many times. Congress is more occupied than Palestine. Exponentially more occupied than Palestine. That's how Congress is today. That's how our government is today. It's run by Israel. Israel annexed the United States of America by hijacking our entire political system. Brothers and sisters, that's not an easy thing, but guess what? There are mu'ashirat. There are new beginnings for humanity. And we said this in the beginning about the college encampments. We've been talking about it for the past few weeks. When you see across the country, the future leaders, they have spoken. The future leaders of America have spoken. They realize what Israel has done. Israel is not able to convince as many people as it used to in the past, and that's why it's doubling down. Because it knows the mask has been lifted, and everyone sees this new form of apartheid that's been hidden for decades by mass media. Brothers and sisters, what else do we need to do with these emotions? Well, June 4th, there's a vote, there's elections. I need to register. I need to vote as a Muslim. We need to break out of being silent and being siloed as a community. You know what? One of the biggest ways that I could undermine, or that I could support my brothers and sisters in Gaza is undermining Zionism in the West. That's my role. We're not in Gaza. Their struggle is different than our struggle. What they could do is different than what we could do. And they're very capable. And they're doing a lot to change the hearts of people across the world. But I need to do something here too. I need to make sure that Zionism is undermined. I can't be too scared, too afraid, too silent about these things anymore. This is how emotions translate to action for us as Muslims. There's a lot to say about this. May Allah forgive us for our shortcomings. May Allah better us. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us people who truly care about the condition of the ummah. May Allah make us of those who teach our children to think like this too. Am I from the Muslims or not? If I am, I need to care. I need to care a whole lot. If all of my care is fully focused and fixated on me, myself, and I, and my bank accounts and my assets and my investments and my businesses, guess what's going to happen? This selfish lifestyle is going to make my life empty. And you know what's going to fill this void? All kinds of lowly things. Depression, anxiety, problems in the home. Wallahi, there's a lot of barakah that comes about by being a person of service, doing the right thing. There's a lot of goodness that comes from this. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the spine and the strength to do that. Allahumma ameen. Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. أما بعد, brothers and sisters, outside there are tables on the brothers and sisters side to sign a petition to support one of the young people in our community who who was being made an example of in Teaneck. He was protesting against the sale of Palestinian land in Teaneck. It doesn't even make sense. How do these things happen? They're happening. They're coming from Israel to auction off and sell lands of our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And you come and find, and you guys probably seen this video, some loser from upstate New York kicking out an old Philistini hajjah who's lived there for generations out of her home, and he's going to live in Philistine. That's happening in a nearby community, Teaneck, a big pro-Israeli community there. And there was a protest. This young man was attacked verbally by somebody, and he responded by just throwing a bottle of water back at him, and they're trying to make it a hate crime. This young man, is innocent of this, but the pro-Israeli community in Teaneck wants to show their power by pressuring the DA office to give him a hefty sentencing as it's a hate crime. These are the things that happen when we're silent as a community. If this matters to you, and it should, then make sure when you go outside, you sign the petition, you say something, because we should not allow this to happen. We should not allow a community to bully its way, to allow one of our own to be wronged in such a way. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us strength. Allahumma ameen, and give us victory. Allahumma fil lana warhamna. وعافنا واعف عنا وتجاوز عن سيئاتنا. اللهم اغفر لصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا وشاهدنا وغائبنا. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيه على الإيمان، ومن أمته منا فأمته على الإسلام. اللهم اجعل خير عمرنا آخرة، واجعل خير عملنا خواتمة، واجعل خير أيامنا يوم أن نلقاك فيه وأنت راض عنا. آمين آمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله. استقيموا يرحمني يرحمكم الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.